Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Intentional Living Podcast with me, Marty Keller, here in Sacramento, California, and my colleague and mentor, John Donovan, in Oceanside, California. How are you
Hey,
doing,
Marty.
John?
I'm doing well today.
Good.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful day here in Sacramento, and
Oh,
quite enjoying it. We have San Diego style weather today, so
oh, good.
quite.
Uh,
It's like maybe it'll make it to 75. It's
yep.
very, very sweet. Um, So this is the Intentional Living Podcast, my friends. In this podcast, we talk about how to identify and break patterns of behavior that we say we don't want, and yet they seem to show up anyway. Um, like some of the examples that we use to help us illustrate this is: Have you ever hurt someone you loved and later regretted it, and then hurt them again in the same way?
Yep.
Have you ever found yourself in the middle of an argument with someone and you realized that the point you were arguing really wasn't correct or right, and you continue to argue the point anyway? Or have you ever been about to do or say something and then realize, maybe with a little voice in your head saying that you shouldn't do it, and you did it anyway?
Yeah.
So in this podcast, we take a look at and to how to uncover and befriend the subconscious obstacles that generate these behaviors in us, and learn to accept them, befriend them, integrate them consciously into our lives, so that they become part of creating the life that we really want, rather than obstacles that prevent us from doing that. And we have a practice, accountability practice, that we do in group setting, and we'll talk a little bit later about joining one of our groups. But we have been John and I, John, you and I have been engaged in a long-term conversation going back to last fall, when we take a look at a number of principles that we have come up with over the years to help illuminate this process, help us understand this inner subconscious world that every human being
Mhm.
has, how that
Yeah.
subconscious world gets formed, how it can manifest without our conscious awareness by definition, and
Hmm.
how to pull some of the things that are in our subconscious out so that we can see them, and we can work on healing them if they are causing us pain. They're causing us to have behaviors that we consciously don't want, but they happen anyway, as we said in the introduction. The whole point being liberating ourselves to create the lives of our conscious desires. And every human being is comes into this world with a program to live a full, happy, powerful life, and most of us don't make it. And
Hmm.
there's probably an evolutionary reason for that. We can talk about that in another podcast. But today we're going to continue our examination of some of our principles, and I'm going to just put them up on the screen to just give people a quick sense of what we're talking about, and so we can do a quick review for
Yeah.
our our interlocutors. So the accountability practical principles, we have these listed with bullet points because they don't have any particular um, none of them is particularly more important than another. So rather than
Right.
list them one, two, three, they're just point, point, point. And there's a podcast for each one of these. So those of you who find any of these arresting, intriguing, annoying, you can check out the podcast that takes a look at each one of these in depth. I'm always getting what I want. It's never about the other person. The issue is not the issue. People treat me the way I want them to. The quality of my life is determined by the focus of my attention. Life happens for me, not to me. What I resist persists. Hurt people hurt people. The world outside of me is but a reflection of the world inside me. Life is lived from the inside out. It doesn't have to make sense. Trust the body. blame-free, judgment-free. Healing is contagious. The more conscious we are of what we choose, the more powerful the choice. Every thought has a corresponding body sensation. Personalize everything. Don't take anything personally. The answer is not the answer. I cannot not feel. I'm always feeling something. What you hate, you become. What you fight against, you strengthen. And today we're going to take a look at our next principle. Nothing is wrong. Nothing is wrong. And when we closed out the last week's podcast, John, you made some kind of comment about not wanting to talk about it.
Yeah. When I first heard you say that, the way you said it like, wait a minute, there's something wrong with that statement. um, and once I realized that, I was, okay, there's something in me that's still resistant to this work and authenticity. Whenever I feel myself in a startled place of no, when somebody's speaking truth to me or just actually talking to me, and I react in an adverse way or with resistance, I know to just take a breath. There's something in that statement, something that somebody has said that has impacted or triggered something in my subconscious that hasn't been dealt with yet. And I can pick a myriad of things about being wrong based on most of my adult life. I was focused on always being right. And I was very difficult for me to admit I was wrong. And if I did admit I was wrong, it was because somebody else either gave me misinformation. It was not me. Like there's no possibility that I could have a concept or a perception that was misinformed. I just couldn't handle it. And as a child, I got brutalized emotionally and spiritually, sometimes physically, because I was wrong. You did that. This has hurt me more than it hurts you, and or I'm only doing this because I love you, and there's corporal punishment or ridicule or um, um, I forget the other word, embarrassment that I couldn't um, regulate, so I got stuck in a belief like that. I made a vow, nobody ever treat me that way again. I'll never. Okay, and that set up the unwillingness to be wrong, and I didn't even know it. I wasn't aware of it because what I've come to understand, when I'm acting out of my subconscious, I am not. That means I'm not aware of it. Like if I'm driving a car and somebody gets in front of me real close, and my reaction to move out, I do that before I think, and afterwards I don't actually have to remember that. I just know that I'm either safe now or I got in the accident, whatever happens with the accident situation. And another example is driving a car for like 3 hours on a trip, and then all of a sudden I wake up and I'm at a certain point where, oh my God, 3 hours just passed and I had no idea what I did. Driving a car, using a blinker, changing lanes, whatever it was coming from my subconscious. So I wasn't aware and didn't register in my conscious mind. So yeah. So
So what's wrong with that?
one of the things I did, I had an aversion to being wrong, to failing, and then being vulnerable. And the way I say that is I didn't want to look foolish or silly. I didn't want to be vulnerable. Didn't want to look like a fool. So I developed this statement. I am willing to be wrong. I am willing to fail, and I'm willing to look foolish. And before that awareness came to me of this willingness, embracing, what used to I couldn't accept about myself. I discovered that this willingness to be wrong put me in a situation where wrong wasn't the objective, right or wrong wasn't the objective. The objective was connection and fluidity and cooperation, which, like, oh my God, how come nobody told me this? So um, I remember talking to the guys in jail, and one of the things we presented to them, the male image, or the image we try to uphold, is based on perfection, production, presentation. Perfection is get it right the first time.
Every
Production
time.
is producing everything for everybody, and then looking good while you're doing these two things that are impossible. So, and I said, well, um, um, I thought, how do I confront that? And as part of this learning to embrace instead of fight against it, I said to these group of guys, because we were in this discussion about being wrong, I'm wrong, he's right, all that stuff, and in the jail, it could create major mayhem. It could, up to including death on the yard. So I said, okay, how about if we consider the willingness to be wrong, the willingness to fail, and the willingness to look like a fool? And it was almost like in unison they came up with this. No way! Are you kidding? And I thought, oh, that's it. That's it. There's something in that. So I've used that ever since. And I became willing to be wrong, fail, and look like a fool. Because I told, especially to look like a fool, be vulnerable. Those guys would say, you can't be vulnerable. You can't be vulnerable. You got to be strong. I said, okay, all right. So you're in this, get it right the first time, produce everything for everybody, and look good doing it. I said, why are you in jail? Somebody called you a name? I don't know. What happened where you gave up your vitality and your time and your, just because somebody didn't like what you said, or I don't, what is it? So the willingness to be wrong, fail, and look like a fool means that I will now seldomly be wrong because it's not in the focus of my mind. Failing is just part of learning, and looking like a fool or being vulnerable is about connecting and stuff. So I don't know how clear that was.
Well, let's explore it more. So I want to make the assertion. I'm going to make the bold assertion, whether you agree or not, that's fine too. But that nothing is wrong is an absolute truth. So that means no matter what, nothing's wrong.
No
And
matter what, nothing wrong.
no matter what, does that mean that things don't go haywire? Does that mean there's no pain? Does that mean there's no conflict? Does that mean there's no death? No.
No.
It just means all these things belong to the way life is. And the reason,
Yeah.
okay, so that's sort of a general principle, and I want to bring it down to personal because, people watching this may go, who gives a, or I don't, that's all bullshit. So
Yeah.
I want to tell the story about how I first encountered this with you. And
Okay.
this is related to the principle that we talked about some months ago called no blame, no judgment, or blame-free, judgment-free environment. And I remember we were sitting in the men's group and you had just started facilitating us. And so we had a group of, I don't know, 8 to 10 guys, and we would sit in a circle and we would bring up stuff that we wanted to work on, things that were bothering us or whatever. And you would help us walk through the accountability practice tree, the accountability tree. And I remember, and the really uncomfortable MO that you use, that I now use as a facilitator, is
Mm-hmm.
that when I would complain about somebody else, I say, I'm really having a problem because I really hate that guy. He's an asshole.
Right.
And you would say, would you be willing to consider that you're an asshole?
Yeah.
And in that moment, I had to make a choice of following your invitation or fighting it. And I remember sitting there thinking to myself, um, well, if if there's if there's no blame or judgment here, that means I can claim to be an asshole without necessarily being an asshole or without that being a bad thing. That just
Correct.
simply being a fact.
Yeah.
That was neither good nor bad, or in the context of this principle, neither right nor wrong.
Correct.
So I took the risk and I said, okay, I'm an asshole. And everything changed in that moment. Actually, changed in the moment where I was willing to say there's nothing wrong with saying this,
Right.
even before I spoke the sentence. And that was when I first had a palpable sense of the power of nothing's wrong. That I couldn't look at the things in my subconscious mind, my judgments, my fears, my irrationalities, if I was going to always make them wrong. That was the reason there, particularly in the shadow part of our subconscious in the first place,
Hmm.
because somehow, somewhere, as a little boy, this goes back to what you were saying, as a little boy, I made the decision there was something wrong about all that stuff. Therefore,
Hmm.
shameful,
Yep.
therefore, something that would get me kicked out of the island, off the island, or out of the
Right.
group, out of the family, whatever, and
Hmm.
therefore could
Hmm.
not be admitted on the pain of psychological death. So that being led as you did, leading me to that point to be willing to risk death, psychological death, in order to be free of the risk of the threat, the only way I could do that is to, at least for a moment, hypothesize there's nothing wrong here. So, what I want to assert to those of you who are listening to the for the first time or struggling with this concept that nothing's wrong, don't make it about the whole universe. Don't make it about the whole globe. Don't make it about our political system. Don't make it about religions. Just make it about a moment in your life. That's what I did. Nothing's
Hmm.
wrong.
Yeah.
But the willingness to be in that changed everything.
Yeah.
And now, for me, whenever I see myself making a judgment, there's something wrong with that, I automatically go, okay, what's really going on in my head?
There you go.
Does it, again, that doesn't mean that there isn't pain. It doesn't mean there aren't problems. It doesn't
Right.
mean that there's somebody who is doing something that is shameful and maybe even things that should be physically prevented. But
Correct.
I'm not willing to say that's right or wrong in any kind of absolute moral sense. So that's my understanding of the power of this principle.
Yeah. Um, in the context, and I want to bring the clarity in the context of this process we call the accountability tree, is saying the truth. And one of the ways we get to a hidden truth is by owning the projection. Now, if you just said, John, this guy's an asshole, and I'm taking care of myself, he's da 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 da, no problem. There's no problem there. You just move through because
Right, because nothing's wrong.
nothing's wrong. When you bite it, when you feed it, and your intensity, say that issue was a 6, which could have been, serious, and you went to 8, 9. Oh no, that's you. No, no, no. If I respond to any event, some asshole comes up, and I go and I am proactive, and I move on. I don't ruminate over it or fixate on this guy and want to change him or whatever. When I go above the current situation, that's something in my subconscious that is yelling that same thing at me. And my subconscious, my experience of my subconscious is that it's very vicious, demeaning, demanding, judgmental, accusatory, all that
Wounding,
stuff. Say again.
wounding.
Wounding, traumatizing. So when I say that truth in the context of the accountability tree, which is just state the data, blame free, judgment free. How do you get to blame free, judgment free? Is you take a nice deep breath, because when you're consciously breathing, you're not in your rational, critical mind, and you feel the impact of the trauma when you were a kid, or you feel the separation that you created based on that old belief, and something moves. It's like emotions know how to move through our body. As children, we weren't mirrored how that happened, so we got stuck somewhere in the body, and then they keep coming out. We call it trigger. Somebody like that guy did something, and it was, let's say it's a 5 or a 6, and you went to 7, 8, 9. Oh, okay, that's something unresolved in your childhood. Because when I'm being proactive, looking for, and I'm in a dire situation or a threatening situation, I'm looking for resources and or setting boundaries and or moving towards my resolution. That's a well-regulated individual. When I'm like fighting that guy and I spend 2 weeks trying to figure out how to get that guy to figure it out, that's wounded child. So yeah, and I've owned some pretty, like, especially in the jail, there's a lot of predators. So I would, like, that guy's a predator. Wait a minute. I'm just going to check. And I'd say, I'm a predator. Actually, oh my God. There's people I have taken advantage of, which is predator. Okay, nice deep breath. I intend to be cooperative and kind. Because of, based on what I learned from my dad, there, for him, everybody was a predator. He would like knock everybody or have an opinion about how they do this, and how they manipulate, how they screw you. And yeah, okay, all right, no, I'm having my own view. I'm having my own value system. I'm creating the authentic John, what I came in with, instead of taking his and reusing his to try to do my life. No. So, and that true statement, I'm that asshole, has encoded in it. It's like, it's a frequency. When I hear myself say I'm a predator, has encoded in it the misinformation from the subconscious. And I want to make that clear. When I'm accountable, that means simply stating the data of where the state I find myself in, whether it's codependency, addiction, rageaholic, which is violent. I'm violent. There's something in that, with that blame-free, judgment-free, that I find validates the wound that caused the condition, violence or predator or asshole. And it reframes, and I say, I intend to be kind, or I intend to be gracious, or I intend to forgive myself. And that's now part of the subconscious that is now going to manifest through me as forgiving, kind, and gracious. In spite of me. I don't have to figure out the how. How do I be kind? When I first owned that I'm violent, I intend to be kind. I had no idea what kindness was. I was so far away from kindness, but I intend kindness. That sound, kindness, has a frequency and the frequency like attract like. So I put that frequency in my subconscious, kindness, that frequency, and it will manifest through me, in spite of me. It'll offer me opportunities to become teachable. It'll offer me opportunities to discover that what I thought was kindness, which was actually placating somebody, that's not kindness, but I thought that was kindness. I discovered one of my awarenesses about what's kindness is, I was in a situation and it was startling or confrontive, and what I did was take a breath. Instead of reacting, well, damn, I was just kind to myself. It's like, I couldn't have figured that out. I couldn't go, oh, how do I be kind to myself? Well, I just take a breath when I'm triggered. It was not in my sense of my frame of reference. I had no experience of it. When I put that I'm violent, I intend to be kind into my subconscious, it offered me the opportunity to experience myself kind, just as the trauma offered me the opportunity to experience violence, which had utility because it kept people away. And that's what that little kid needed, was keep people away. Well, okay, okay. And then here we go, nothing's wrong. And it causes separation. It causes um, self-deprecating thoughts. It causes um, isolation, aloneness. It causes confusion about where I belong, who am I. It does cause all that. Um, it's not wrong. It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to heal.
In one of our podcast conversations a while ago, the formula that you said was there's nothing wrong and there's pain.
And there's pain. And it hurts.
And yeah,
So as a child, I couldn't feel that hurt. And I didn't have anybody to mirror for me how to move that concept perception through me. So I got stuck in me. And when something happened that we call trigger in the moment, the frequency felt the same, the feeling tone triggered this, I would react from that defensive mode and go into fight, flight, freeze, or please. And my fight in this body, 6 foot, 250 pounds, was scary, was threatening, was all that. And Marty at work, it kept people away. Now, it left me isolated, alone, confused, drunk, not knowing what to do. I had what I called low-grade suicidal tendencies. I thought the double yellow line in the road was put there for me to cross specifically. And that's risky behavior, and I didn't care because I didn't care.
right.
So
Well, the utility of the insight that nothing's wrong it's a wonderful two-way street, and I want to offer that you've been discussing um, the reactions that we all have in the traumas of our childhood that are to create a defense mechanism within us, and that it's
mhm.
carried forward into adulthood, and then we can only see when we're to learn about projection. And but I want to offer, and we've talked about this before, but for the newcomer, that projection isn't just a projection of our quote negative end quote qualities. It's also a projection of our quote positive qualities. And as always, the trigger or the information is I have an emotional response to something I see out there that's disproportionate to what's actually going on. So you were talking about the event might be an average of a 6 level, and I'm having an 8 or 9 response.
Right.
I had the insight also that I would see somebody that I thought was incredibly beautiful, and my heart would start racing. And I
Mm-hmm.
would say, oh my God, that person is beautiful, intelligent, brilliant, whatever, not knowing that I was projecting my own beauty, intelligence, talent onto that person because I couldn't own
Yeah.
that I had those qualities any more than I could own that I
Right.
was cruel or violent or any of those other quote negative qualities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that the there's nothing wrong with being brilliant. There's nothing wrong with being beautiful. There's nothing wrong with being talented any more than there's anything wrong with being stupid or making a mistake or looking foolish or any of those things. They
Mm-hmm.
just are. They just
Yeah.
are things that happen to us in our lives. And the accountability practice allows us to see them happening in real time. And like you said, take a deep breath and ask, is this what I want? If I don't want this, what is it that I want? Oh, I want to be
Right.
happy. I want to be joyful. I want to feel safe. And then seal the deal by making it formally making it an intention. I intend to feel safe. I
Yep.
consider that, we've talked about this before, I consider that essentially a reprogramming instruction to my subconscious mind.
Exactly. Yes.
And
In a state that's enlightened, that's raised, in the statement of truth, I'm violent. There's an awareness that happens in the frequency of raises, and then when I say I in that higher frequency, I say I intend to be kind. That's the rocket fuel for the manifestation. That's the intensity of it, the desire of it, the motivation of it, and it manifests. Just like in the trauma, this fight, flight, freeze, please, terrified was the motivational structure to stay stuck, to not express, to assume a role, to whatever it was that we needed to do to survive. It was in a high intensity situation. Otherwise, we were running around playing and knocking things over and having a good time. I mean, just being kids, playing. And it was in those trauma periods where the intensity went up, the feeling tone, the fight, flight, freeze, please, terror, startle, um, adrenaline rush, and then we go, I got stuck in there. And when we do the accountability tree, I talk about healing the subconscious. Necessarily, you have to create an emotion equal to or greater than what's stuck in there. That's what the accountability tree does. That truth, I'm violent, raises the frequency, and it resonates and validates all at the same time, releases that held stuck belief, resistance, and I find myself in a different state automatically, instantaneously. Sometimes it's difficult for me to catch up physically, sometimes mentally, with the shift that happened, although other people can see it in me and say, I do see a difference in you between last week and this week. There was a young man that came in my group last week, and he was holding some energy. He wasn't really sure about whether he wanted to be in the treatment center or not. So he was kind of like, talking and walking through and saying hi. And I said, would you be willing to consider? And then at first I said, wait a minute, what do you want that you don't have? And he wanted to live a life of peace. He wanted some kind of peace in his life. I said, okay, here's what I want to tell you. You, my friend, are an energy suck. When you walk into a room, you take everybody's energy and you suck it right out of them. And he looked up and he looked around and goes, is that true? And everybody was shaking their heads. It's like this guy comes in the room and everybody's on edge. Everybody's on walking on an eggshell. He didn't even know it. He thinks he's like a real cool guy. No. And he came in this week different because he owned it. He was willing to own that and then create an intent to be peaceful. I forget what his intent was, but he came in different this week. And it's amazing how this process works so well, and yet is so difficult to get the concept or the idea that we're in a healing place, truth place, where am I placed, ownership of what happened to me and the result. Alcoholic. Oh, I mean, I know I'm an alcoholic. I can quit drinking. I'm just a heavy. No, I'm an alcoholic. Oh, of course I am. Oh my God, I'm coming back. I don't know what happened just then, but I like this place. I'm coming back. This feels good. And then my journey started
So
from the truth.
that's a good note for us to wrap up on, because I want to let everybody know that there are that all this work is best done in a group setting, and there are 4 accountability practice intentional living meetings every week, all on Zoom. And I invite you to come and join us. If there's something that's bugging you, if you can't, there's something you want that you don't seem to be able to get, feel free to come to one of the meetings, and they're all facilitated. John facilitates on Saturday mornings. I facilitate Wednesday afternoon, and 2 of our colleagues facilitate Mondays and Thursday nights, all Pacific time. And we'll walk you through the accountability tree practice that we've been talking about here to create that something different experience that, John, you just demonstrated that you witnessed this week. And I witnessed this in myself and other people on a regular basis, because I've learned that nothing's wrong, and that when I just embrace my humanity, which sometimes is not something I'm proud of, and sometimes it's something that should be shouted about from the rooftops. Either way, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just being human.
Yeah.
And it's all we got, my friends. We're born and we die, and we have this period of time between life and death. And it's like, what do you want to make of it? And John, you taught me through the accountability practice how to answer that question for myself and how to manifest that life, because all human beings are manifestation machines. I mean,
Yep.
we're creating our lives. Just most of
Yep.
us are doing it without being aware of what we're doing.
Correct.
That's why we get these compulsive behaviors that we talk about at the beginning of the podcast that befuddle us and make us get angry with ourselves that we can't make things work the way we think we should.
Yep.
So, information on how to join one of the meetings is at the end of the podcast. So please feel free to check us out. Like I said, they're all on Zoom, so it should be easy to join us. And also, please hit the like button on this video and subscribe to the Intentional Living channel. We'd appreciate that. Help spread the message. So, with that, John, before we wrap up, any last minute thoughts that you'd like to share?
I'm grateful to have been graced with this information, and it is my intent to give it to as many people as possible in the shortest amount of time. And I do that for selfish reasons, because when everybody's living authentically, there is nothing of mine you want or need. I'm safe. So, yeah.
All right. Thanks, John. Thanks, everybody.
Hmm.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.